Then went into sports, met a random offensive lineman of the New York Giants at a game, at a Nets game. We sat next to each other, and I was just like, "Hey, man, like if I bring you some deals, like would you cut me in?" And these guys, like they're just hoping to make, get out of camp, right? Like they just want to make the team. 10 grand for them is, it's just amount of money. Like if they can do $10,000 deals, that helps them pay their family bills in case they get cut. Um, and he loved it. And I would literally just call up like local shops, pizza shops, pottery shops, and just arrange like 10, 15, 20 grand, like different like meet and greets and shit. I probably brought him in like $250,000 in the first month. And then my name kind of just spread around in like the New York Giants locker room of like this guy who would like hook him up with like jets. And I know shit. I just was never afraid to give a cold call or give a cold email and spend the time to do it.
What is up, everyone? This is episode 13, and today we're talking the business side of Michael Gruen. So Michael Gruen first came on my radar about a year ago. He represents Josh Richards and Griffin Johnson, and these are TikTok stars turned full-blown entrepreneurs. And since then, I've just been seeing this guy literally everywhere. So he started the talent management firm TalentX. He just launched a venture arm to his business. He started a sports agency. He announced a production company with Mark Wahlberg. I mean, this guy is literally everywhere. He's 22 years old. And I just don't understand at all what is going on. Dave Portnoy, the founder of Barstool Sports, called him one of the most mysterious, obnoxious, and interesting people to walk this earth. So the point of this podcast was to figure out who the hell Michael Gruen is, where he came from, where he's going. And his story it's something that would only be possible in the internet age. So he's this Orthodox Jewish kid who makes hundreds of thousands of dollars playing Runescape, which is like an online video game. He makes a ton of money there. He graduates college at 18. He starts a sports agency. Then he gets into talent management. It goes on and on and on. And you're just like, the whole interview, I was just like, who is this kid and where did you come from? And it's a story that would only really be possible in the internet age. I mean, usually if you want to rise up the ranks of talent management, venture capital, you name it, you start out in the mailroom, you start out as a coordinator, you start out at an entry-level position, and you work your way up. And somehow Michael has completely, shortcutted that path and charted his own. So I think you're going to find this interview very, very interesting. But anyway, let's get back into the episode. But before we do, I'm going to ask you if you could please subscribe, like, do all the things, give me a review. All that stuff means a ton. So I wanted to start off this podcast with a bang.
Yeah.
Dave Portnoy said this of you. He said, Michael Gruen is one of the most mysterious, obnoxious, interesting human beings who have ever walked this world.
No, the world, yeah. I thought the phrasing was kind of weird. I never heard someone say the world. They usually say the earth.
Why do you think he said that?
I don't know. I think he knows the interplanetary dimensions that have other people and I'm still weirder than them.
You've called yourself a self-proclaimed deal junkie. In my world, you kind of came out of nowhere. And suddenly you're everywhere at the same time. Where did this all start? I heard something about autographs, something about RuneScape.
Yeah. Well, when I was a kid, I always liked doing things that people say are impossible. When I was 12, it was, collecting autographs and getting in touch with people that, my parents say, oh, it's not going to happen, not possible. I just did it for like the sport of it more than anything else. I was a massive RuneScape player, addicted beyond, and I used to play it nonstop, and I turned it into a multi-million-dollar business, with Gold Farm and create accounts. And eventually I figured out that I could kind of run a botnet and make these accounts worth lots of money and sell them. So I used to have like 75 to 100 accounts running at a time, gold farming, sell the gold, and then the account would level up through the gold, getting the gold, and then I would sell those.
Okay.
So I created this.
Let me cut you off before you go too far. Let me try to. So you're playing RuneScape, and you can mine this virtual currency in RuneScape to get other things.
Correct.
You saw this as a business opportunity and said, I'm going to start selling this. I'm going to create bots to mine this virtual currency and then sell this virtual currency. Is that right?
I'd be lying if I said I figured it out. It was more of it happened to me. Someone asked to buy the gold off of me that I had because I was like a pretty wealthy player in the game. I played a lot. And I was like, wait, what? I was like, this is like a real business. And then I got like $10,000 from like gold that I accrued just randomly. And I was like, all right, that's fucking sick.
So in this moment, you are at home and your parents, what do they think you're doing?
I don't know. It's a good question. My dad knows more of what I do. My mom, I still don't think has any clue. And that's okay. I don't. You got to remember, I come from like an Orthodox Jewish family, so it's a very different world, to say the least.
All right. So you're Orthodox Jewish kid.
Yeah.
You're
Well, it
mining
was.
was okay was
Yeah.
you're mining cryptocurrency. Do your Ryan RuneScape stuff. I just need to understand like who the fuck Michael Gruen is. Why were you like, all right, this is going to be an opportunity. I'm suddenly making what hundreds of thousands of dollars selling this, and I'm just in the bedroom of my Orthodox Jewish house. Like, paint this picture
Yeah.
for me. Who is this kid at this time?
I've always been a nonconformist, so I was kicked out of multiple schools, and every teacher hated me, and I never gave a shit. And they would always tell me I was voted least likely to succeed in eighth grade by a bunch of assholes, and I just never like gave a shit, and I was never cut out for. You gotta like people don't understand how cultist, and I don't even mean that in a bad way, but it's a very tight knit community, and they kind of dictate what's acceptable, what's not, and if you go out of the norm even a little bit, you're kind of looked at in a different way. So I was kind of like, if I'm going to be looked at negatively, I might as well just say like, really fuck this, and not like try to toe the line. And I just said like, I'm going to be me and do what I want to do. I graduated from high school when I was 14. I went to college and did this in college. This is like my college business.
And when
And
did you graduate college? You graduated college at
18.
18. So you
Yep.
didn't have this normal college experience of their parents paying, $80,000 a year for some liberal arts school in Maine. Not my
No,
parents, of course.
no, no. I paid off my own college.
So, and then at some point, you have this hustle where you move from RuneScape to athletes. Is that the
No,
next?
well, sort of. Like at the same time, there's a guy named Brock Pierce who's a Bitcoin billionaire now, but at the time he was in the same business as me selling internet gold. He used to run all the large like internet websites. So I was always following him and a fan of what he was building, and he was one of the first people to take the jump into Bitcoin. So kind of taking that internet gold idea and kind of putting it into more of a decentralized fiat, quote unquote. Even though I hate the word fiat, and then from there it was like I was like, all right, let me just put some money into like a bunch of these things. So I was like a Bitcoiner back in 2014, not having a goddamn clue what I was doing, or what it was, or what it will be. I just saw like him doing it, and he was like kind of the like epitome of success in the internet gaming space, like one of the
Mm-hmm.
original gaming executives. Then went into sports, met a random offensive lineman of the New York Giants at a game, at a Nets game. We sat next to each other, and I was just like, "Hey, man, like if I bring you some deals, like would you cut me in?" And these guys, like they're just hoping to get out of camp, right? Like they just want to make the team. 10 grand for them is it's just amount of money. Like if they can do $10,000 deals, that helps them pay their family bills in case they get cut. Um, and he loved it. And I would literally just call up like local shops, pizza shops, pottery shops, and just arrange like 10, 15, 20 grand, like different like meet and greets and shit. I probably brought him in like $250,000 in the first month. And then my name kind of just spread around in like the New York Giants locker room of like this guy who would like hook him up with like jets. And I know shit. I just was never afraid to give a cold call or give a cold email and spend the time to do it. Kind of created like a reputation there, and I created like cash flow. And then I met my partner of mine, and I was like, "Yo, um, I have what you want, which is capital," because he was a sports agent, he was a basketball agent, and I said, "I have what you want, which is cash flow. You have what I want, which is the certification and the ability to actually represent the players in the field. I'll fund your company. Like I'll create the cash flow for you. Let's partner up. Give me 50% of the company. I'll create the cash flow for you to pay the signing bonuses and all that's needed to train the players and have them sign with you. And let's go." And it worked. And that was kind of my first business. Like I would say that's like my first dabbling into like the representation space. And it was interesting experience to say the least.
So how old were you? So you're sitting at this Nets game. How old were you when you pitched this
15,
lineman?
15.
You understand that that's kind of different, right?
Yeah, but like the thing was, I went about it in like I didn't ask him to sign anything. I didn't tell him like it was very just give me a few bucks of what I give you. And I never even like told him like 20% or a commission. I just said like throw me something. he was really good about it and he was nice about it. But for me, it was like an entry point. When I was like 13, my favorite player in the league was Jason Kidd. I was a huge Nets fan. I'm like a huge Jason Kidd fan. And I met him. So the way it works is like, I don't know if you ever had season tickets, but you get invited to these like bullshit events where the players go and they're miserable and they kind of just mope around until they're out. And the Nets had nobody there because no one gave a shit. I was a season ticket holder, so I basically had all access to all the players, and nobody cared. So I went over to Jason. I was like, "Yo, would love to chat with you and get involved in your foundation." He was like, kind of blew me off. Hey, call this person and talk to them. And I just blew up his agent, Jeff Schwartz. Like blew him up every day, called him, and eventually he picked up and was like, "Call Portia Kidd." And then a couple of days later, like Portia reached out to me and I started volunteering for him and it just gave me access to like my favorite player of all time. And it was surreal. I didn't do anything really, but it was fun and it was cool. So I was always just like, how do I not finesse, but how do I create a little bit of a value prop or at least enough of a hustle where people are like, let's support him a little bit. And Jason wrote me a college recommendation letter. So that was pretty cool.
All right. So you're doing this athletes, you start this agreement with this guy,
Yeah.
and what happens next?
Well, then I merged with the sports agency because I was creating cash flow. Like I was having like random players call me. I would like not sign, meaning like help out random players across the board, like ex-hockey players. I mean, dude, a lot of these guys have no money. Like if you get like a former athlete, like baseball players in their 50s, half of them have $0. So if you can throw them 10 grand to do a camp somewhere or train somebody to like some school or something, like that's a big thing for them. So I was kind of like the bargain bin for athlete representation for a while, but I created real cash flow. So everyone can go kick rocks. Like, did I have any big players? No, but I didn't need it. I was creating more revenue than a lot of the big agencies' marketing departments just by hustling.
And then what happened with that? So you're doing that. It's going well.
Well, then I merged with that partner, which ironically I just hired. So it's kind of funny. We just opened up our NBA agency with Josh and we just hired him to come back. So it kind of ran full circle. But yeah, we partnered, we made some money, and we kind of realized midway through, everyone's throwing money on the table. You need real capital, like real capital and real basketball relationships. Otherwise, you just get knocked down. And the league is, the NBPA, which is the Players Association that certifies agents. They're down to make the example of like the person that is not the big name because like they don't want to hurt the real economy of the basketball world. So they hit the people like me to show like to make the point of like don't cheat, don't sign play, don't get money under the table, all that. It just became virtually impossible. So I left it. He merged with another agency. I made some money out of it. And that's kind of when things got a little interesting. That's when I started dabbling into influencer world. And I created a company with a guy named Jason Norman, who's a pretty big Nickelodeon actor at the time. And we kind of went with it for 9 months and I was miserable. I hated it. I hate the babysitting of management and it was just driving me up a goddamn wall. So I quit. I just said, I'm done. Went into crypto where I created a startup called Frax, Frax. That's now used to be called Decentral Bank with a guy named Stephen Moore, who was Trump's nominee to run the Federal Reserve and Trump's chief economic advisor. When he lost the Federal Reserve bid, I was like, dude, like, let's just go do something in crypto. Brought him in with a couple founders, raised some money, and our coin is now, I think, valued at like 220 million bucks in the market. So it's doing okay.
That's a lot of things. So you go
Yeah.
Runescape, athletes, influencer agency, crypto, and now you're at TalentX, amongst other things.
I wouldn't say I'm at TalentX. I started it. Yeah.
Okay, you started TalentX. But that's
Yeah.
a management company. How does that management company differ from the one you just talked about?
I only handled 2 people. Like so in the beginning of the company, I met Josh, and the original idea that I wanted to do was I was working in crypto, making a really nice salary, and it was like everything was just kind of nice, but it was really boring and just kind of nitty gritty, and I wasn't having fun. And I started like hanging out with Josh and a lot of influencers, like just casually, and I kind of became the guy that everyone would hit up for like relationships, like an intro to this, an intro to that, like this label, that label. So I was always like a connector who wanted to meet people. And it just got annoying. And it also just got tedious because, I mean, you know how it is. If you make an introduction, you kind of like have to follow it along a little bit, to make sure it's like working, especially with like influencers where they don't reply to half the text. It's just like, there's a lot of tedious, like just micromanaging. And I just was like, why am I doing this for free? And more importantly, why am I doing this at all? and just said like, Josh, like let's start just like doing some shit together. And I kind of started working with him. TalentX kind of came out of that. But I was originally the head of all the talent, and I hated my life. It was miserable because you're working with 120 talent, overseeing a department, and nothing gets done because it's like you could do a small thing for every person, but it doesn't accrue into anything. Like you couldn't build any building, you couldn't lay any foundations. So it was like I'd make one call for this person, a call for that person, and then nothing got done. And I just kept feeling every day incredibly stagnant. The only thing that was going was the client numbers and the revenue, but the revenue wasn't really me. It was the managers selling it. And I just like felt stagnant and miserable. And I just told Josh one day, I was like, I just want to like focus on you, maybe one or two other people, and just run with it. That's kind of what we did. And that was where, it's why like I hate the word manager. I always use the word business partner because I don't ever want to be the person that's like doing the menial stuff or driven by a couple of dollars. I really want to be driven by a bigger vision than that. And that's like part of the psyche of any of these agents or representatives is like they're always scared of losing people. And I just never wanted to be in that spot. I wanted to have like one or two people that I trusted, that I cared about, and build with, because that's how you can make generational wealth for them and yourself.
Do you think that's a shift right now in management? Like if I'm WME and I manage all these people, I'm CAA, I
Yep.
manage all these people, your model seems very similar to what Reed has
Yeah.
at that firm, where it's a much more smaller, toned down agency where you're trying to build something big off Mr. Beast or the rest of their talent.
Yeah. I mean, we work with Mr. Beast team a lot. We co-invest. I would say somebody on our direct team, whether it's me or Marshall runs our fund, or Josh or Griff, talk to somebody on their team every day or every other day. I absolutely love Reed, love Ezra. Like they just have a great goddamn team. And I'm incredibly like thankful that we're in their orbit. But the reason why the agencies can never do that is because the agents are not, they're not properly incentivized, and they can't be. The way it's structured is, think about it like this: they come from the goddamn mailroom, right? They don't have money. They just spent all their savings because they were working in the mailroom, making $15 an hour, living in LA or New York, and then they need cash flow. Like they just need cash. Like they're living off the pennies they're making. It's hard to incentivize someone like that because you can't give good advice or real advice. Everything you're going to tell them is going to be subconsciously or consciously driven by quick decisions and quick money. And there's a few people like myself or Reed that have made money outside, to where I look at things from a much more objective and long-term perspective, because 10 grand today doesn't move the needle for me. So I don't think about 10 grand today, really. The only time I think about it is when we always try to make sure that Josh and Griffin are having enough revenue where they're able to survive and live comfortably. So that's important. But the overall arching goal that we're trying to create is a long-term process. And that's like, it's not possible to really make this like the new Hollywood norm. And I guess that's part of the benefit we have.
And then so that transitions into you guys launching this fund, Animal Capital.
Yeah.
What's like the pitch if I'm a startup versus working with you versus working with, a normal seed stage or fund?
So well, just for context, we were angel investing before the fund. So we have probably 25 portfolio companies from before the fund that we all personally invested in. And what we did kind of was, the way we structured it is we all go in together with the same amount of money. One of us might put in a little bit more money, but everyone went in together, so all our incentives are aligned. And we saw success there, but also we started building the relationship. So I kind of go into anything I'm doing and I tackle that very specifically. So for example, when we came to venture capital, we spent all day on the phone with every major venture capitalist you can name, from Joe Lonsdale to Peter Thiel to Jim Breyer. Like they went through the gamut. Like Tim Draper, they just got on the phone with everyone and learned. Naval Ravikant, I mean, just go down, like literally everyone you can name and learn.
How do you? I need to know, what does your cold email look like? Like, how do you get Josh and Griff and yourself in front of Naval, Peter Thiel? Like, these are some people
Naval's a great story, actually.
People would pay anything to get in front of them.
Well, we got to remember, a lot of them I know from before. I know, like Mark Cuban's been a friend, Tillman Fertitta owns the Rockets, has been a friend. So a lot of these people I knew from before. If you want to talk about how that happened, I can. But the Naval story is actually really funny, because I had emailed him probably 3 times over the course of a month, and he kept ignoring my email. He then was on Clubhouse in a room talking shit about me and Josh. And he's like, oh, these kids are like, what, joke, whatever. And I emailed him being like, hey, Naval, I understand like everything you're saying and thinking. Would love an opportunity because he said something like, we're all like, you're just shirtless TikTokers. And I was like, would love the opportunity to show you why we're not just shirtless TikTokers. And he's like, haha, I'm caught. Here's my cell phone number. Call me tomorrow.
So you have Naval calls you guys a bunch of shirtless TikTokers, and you turn what I think is probably was some perception of what Josh was previously. So when I interviewed Josh,
Yeah.
it seems like he was in the midst of a PR shift of Josh Richards initially was this party frat shirtless guy who did a bunch of dumb shit, and then somebody, whether it was you or somebody else, got a hold of him, and he is now pivoted his career where he's a much different person now.
It's actually not true. It was the opposite. He was originally, when I met him, the guy that he is now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a little more immature, but very like smart. And the reason why I liked him always was when he talks, things are in numbers. So it was like I asked him, like, what's your daily schedule? I woke up at 8:30, I'd go shower. Like very, things were very calculated in terms of numerical terms, everything he did. And that intrigued me. And then I asked him, like, what does your dad do? He's like, my dad's a calculus teacher. I'm like, oh, okay, that's why, right? And we started the company together. He was on the phone, 4 or 5 hours a day working on shit, calling talent, like working hard. Then Sway happened, and it was kind of like his first time away with zero parents and a lot of, girls hitting him up. And it's just like a crazy culture shock combined with, a group of people that, some of them have never even had like real parents raising them because they left early or were early influencers. And it's just like a universe and everyone, it's just hard to keep yourself in check. It's like Griffin was a college kid, Bryce was an influencer from before, like Jaden liked to party, Anthony liked to party. They all kind of came in, and Josh liked to party too, but it got out of control because there was nobody to tell them no. And there was no checks and balances on them. And they honestly didn't even think about their careers. So it was like, it was a quest to bring Josh back as opposed to like to bring him to a new shift. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I cut you off. So what is the pitch? You're learning from Peter Thiel, Naval. When you guys enter VC, you said you were seed investing, but you're entering VC now kind of in a real meaningful way. What is the pitch to startups who work with you versus other funds?
So the first thing is when we take on a company, we deliver for them on everything they need outside of social media. So whether it's a company like Deliver, they were led by Kotu. It helps startups, CPG startups like ship quicker. And we've been able to deliver for them all the clients they wanted faster than the other funds that they could. So we're actually doing like hands-on help. And that's a startup that has texted me multiple times, like, we were nervous about you guys going in, we weren't sure, and you guys have well over delivered on what you promised and then some, right? So like, okay, that's one. And then versus game, we were the first check in their second round, and then we raised their entire round for them. Literally their entire round, $4.5 million. Right. And like they didn't know what to expect from us, but we led the product and we brought on Sean Rad, we brought on the Winklevi twins. We just went out and made their entire round. And I can go down. Like we just invested in one startup and I'm under an NDA. I can't talk about it. But long story short, I brought on all the strategics they wanted. And it's just like the wide net we've casted by doing those phone calls in the beginning, right? Like all those phone calls that we spent hours and hours and hours doing for them to meet those investors are the ones that give us the leg up. Because any startup you're doing, I know is strategic that's going to help you across the finish line. Every single type of startup. So I get on the phone with them. And I'm like, okay, you need to talk with this guy, that guy, and I'll have my assistant like send the emails out. And I generally can tell like, okay, this guy will like that type of startup. So I just like read the room pretty well. I'm like, I know like Fabricio Grinda, anything with a platform, like a mutual like two-way platform, he's the lead investor always. Like Uber, he did all those, like he did Uber Eats. I mean Postmates, like all those types of startups. DoorDash. So I already know like if it's around that type of topic, send to him. If it's like media or like something of that nature, go to Kevin Mayer. I just have those, like I have the list who I know goes where. And I've been able to, like we just did a genomial company and I brought on, Thomas Tull, who created Legendary and is multi-billionaire. So I just like know who does what and how to place it. So our strategic help is beyond. And to be honest, the press on it speaks for itself. Like when people ask me, I just send the articles. Like there's an article that says that we invested in versus game, and then Sean Rad came on with $1 million check. It was Peter Thiel, Sean Rad, and Justin Mateen right after us for $1 million. And they openly said it was like we brought them on. Like that's a headline in Tube Filter. And then we have another time where we brought up, it's like we brought on with Delivery, like they have tons of clients with the Fan Control Football League. We went down to the finals and we did a whole bunch of things with them, and that's in the press. Like there's just enough track record. It's why I'm always like veering to the press. It's because it's just document everything. It's easier to just be like, you don't believe me? Talk to the founders.
And you said social media is not part of what you guys offer.
No, it is, but I want that to be the ancillary benefit. I want to be in there regardless of that.
Gotcha. So because you're not trying to limit yourself only to companies who are just trying to get access to Josh and his social media. They want
because at the end of the day, then you're not going to have a good return. I want to get in with the best companies and be able to carry my weight, which is a lot. I'm pretty big, without having anything to do with the social media side. And the social media side is a benefit. And we're very good about it. We just did a lot with PIM, which is Prepare Your Mind. It was founded by Robin Williams' son after his dad committed suicide. And that's like one example of a company we've done a ton for just because it's such a good cause and we wanted to be a part of it. But I want them to want us in regardless. And the other big thing we have is, what you got to remember is, because we're only 15 million, like that was super strategic. We could have raised 50, but not have been hard. I had a $20 million anchor willing to go in. It was just simply, I never want to have to lead around ever. We're everyone's best friend right now, right? Mm-hmm. Because we're super value add, which everyone says, but our results speak, and we're only putting in 200 grand. So, if you're Lightspeed or you're Sequoia, we're a great value addition investor. And if you're putting in a Series A, we're taking nothing on the cap table, right? So they all want us in.
And what do you think of Jake Paul and his fund?
I don't know anything. Like I know that they did it, and I'm happy for him, and I don't know much about it. From what I understand, they're rolling funds. I don't even know how much they raised or kind of what. I've never seen them. I haven't seen them on a cap table yet. So I don't really know what kind of check sizes or any information, and I wish them well. It is what it is. Like the fact that young people are looking into investing, and to be frank, we've had returns, we've already had exits. Like we're doing fine. And you know what? If the first one doesn't work out, then I'll say I'm wrong. But until that time, I'm going to maintain the fact that I think we're going to have a pretty decent return. And I think we'll raise the next fund. And I want to just keep doing $15 million funds. I don't ever want to raise past that. Maybe 25, but I don't want to ever go to a $100 million fund. I don't give a fuck what my returns are.
And then if the firm is small, so it's you, Josh, Griff, is he in the fund too? Noah. Yep. Like you have
and then I have a head of venture.
But then you also have the sports agency you just launched. You have this production studio thing with Mark Wahlberg and Josh.
Yep.
At some point, do you have too many things where you guys are stretched too thin because, there's only so much time in a day?
So let me tell you what happened. So when I started doing this, I was, going pretty gung-ho. And a lot of founders that, successful founders like Sean Rad and others would sit down with me and just ask, like, do you think you're being too wide, all that stuff? And it got to me, and I was second doubting myself. And literally, as I was starting to think about it and second guess myself, I had dinner with Steve Cohn, who is the Point72 hedge fund manager, who owns the New York Mets. And he said, ignore everybody. They're all wrong. He said, you are doing the exactly right thing. He said, go the hedge fund model, because if you use the juice on one thing, yes, the upside's higher, but the downside's significantly worse. And if they end up with nothing, you're going to be screwed. But he said, what you should do is give out a lot of equity to good operators. So it's the way we kind of did Annie, right? So if you look at what we did with Annie, we started kind of super small. I brought on a CEO that has sold a beverage in the past, brought on a CMO who was the former head of digital marketing for Nike Global. And we have a legitimate team of real people, right? We gave out, nice amount of percentage. It was over 50%, 54%. But at the end of the day it takes us only, I think it's less actually. I think they own 40 combined. And our group owns 60. And it's great because we spend 4 to 5 hours a week on it. And we know we have amazing operators, better than we can do it. And we're already in retail. And that's because of the team. I couldn't do that. There's no way. It's too tedious. So we just hire operators. So when you say all these companies are doing, it's right. But we just hired, our sports agency, we hired a CEO. So we're involved, we're overseeing it. We talk to them once a day, but I'm not in it 24/7. I'm not in it 24/7. I'm not in our fund 24/7. I hire operators and then we oversee the output. So before we put an investment, I look into it. But that's a big difference between getting on 100 cold calls with founders versus, hey, we want to put 100K or 200K into this company. I want you to vet it. It's just the amount of time is 1/50th. So all across the board, like we have a head of development for a production company. So like, yes, is Josh on the phone when we're selling a show? Sure. But most of the calls in the production company are about tiny small things or processes that somebody else is handling. So, it's like, are we busy? Yeah, we're goddamn busy, but we're actually like a lot less. It's not as crazy as people think. It's long days and it's hard, but it's not like Josh is working 16 hours a day. He works a good 8, but he's, at night he goes kind of relaxes and does this, like watches some TV and whatever. And we're all good.
Do you enjoy the critics out there that are just saying that these are a bunch of TikTokers who don't actually know what they're doing and this is all going to crash and burn terribly?
I don't say you said I do enjoy it. I don't care either way. I think like I definitely enjoy when they're proven wrong, and I find it more in just like humorous that it keeps evolving. And I keep seeing these critics, but also that's the biggest reason why we didn't just open a fund. We talked to 200 investors over the course of 3 months, and it wasn't just me. The guys were on those calls. Yeah. Josh and Griffin are on those calls. So they're not saying we know what we're talking about. What we're saying is we've spent the time to get to know the people and know what they're talking about. So we get the deal flow, we get advice. Like, here's the thing, man. If I see that Sean Rad's going into a deal with $1 million, I'm pretty good. Sean's not a bad, like I know Sean. I know how much he bets. Like, doesn't mean I do it automatically or I don't look into it too. Of course I do. But I already know going in, I'm looking at something that's serious. Right. Like I'm not looking into like the crap.
No, you guys are putting in the work. It's clear. Like I know the same people you talk to, and you guys are clearly approaching the space in a tactical. We're going to talk to they are lucky to have someone like you who can somehow get them in the same room as Naval. But yeah, you guys are going out. This is an approach of, all right, we're going to talk to the best investors in the world, and you guys can call us TikTokers, and we will use that criticism as a way with Naval to get us in the room with him.
Right. And that's the thing, example. It's like if you go look at our advisory board, it's the Winklevi, it's Justin Connell founded Twitch. It's Sukhinder Singh Cassidy, who was the former president of StubHub, on the board of Urban Outfitters, a bunch of other major companies. It's Jana from Lightspeed, one of the managing partners. It's Kevin Mayer. Like, it's real people that are doing real things. And I'm not going to crash and burn because I'm not relying on me, right? I'm relying on a list of people that are vetting and overseeing what I'm doing to make sure I'm on the right path. I don't think I know shit. All I know how to do is I work hard and I know when to ask the right people. Like, Josh did the stock draft for CNBC, right? I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, saw it.
You know who coached him before the draft? Steve Cohn and Anthony Scaramucci. 2 legendary hedge fund managers, and whatever, forget Anthony with politics. I'm just saying he manages $14 billion, and Steve is obviously one of the greatest traders of all time. They're coaching him before the draft, went an hour and a half breaking down, and the Winklevi also helped him out, just breaking down which stocks, like in what situations to pick what, where he thinks things are going. That's how you go about doing your things. You don't rely on yourself. Like, I wouldn't have let Josh go on TV and just pick out of a hat what he thought would go up that day or what he thought would go up the next 6 months. I said, you reach out to Steve and you asked him, hey, do you have half an hour to talk? And Steve said, sure. Texted Steve said, sure. And that was it. And then I felt very comfortable knowing that Josh is going on TV being coached by a legend like Steve. And that's what it comes down to. It's like, I don't feel comfortable coaching him myself. I just know how to call the right people. Like, people tell me, oh, you don't know entertainment. You don't know this. You don't know that. It's like 100% right. I don't know shit, but I know the right people to call that. You know it. That's all that matters. If you can keep putting the right people on the phone to ask the right advice, you're going to win. It's like, look what Michael Ovitz did with Andreessen. He just keeps he became friends with Mark Andreessen. He keeps following onto Andreessen's deal, and he's 10x his net worth after selling CAA, right? And then look at Ron Meyer, who didn't do that. And that's why Michael Ovitz, and Ron's one of my mentors. I love the guy, but he just didn't get into the VC, didn't attach himself like that. Mm-hmm. And that's why Ovitz is worth hundreds of millions, over 500 million bucks. He just attached himself to the right people.
Right.
I don't view myself as a smart person. I just view myself as knowing smart people.
All right, folks, that is the interview. I hope you guys liked it. He's just a wild character, man. All right. Before I leave you, though, I'm going to ask you to do all the things. Please Subscribe on Apple, subscribe on Spotify. Please give me a 5-star review if you really like this pod. If you made it this far, I think you kind of liked it. And then on YouTube, make sure to smash the subscribe button, like it, give me a comment, do all the things, and I will see you guys next week.